diving. Who comes and stops us in our tracks? Bravely we prove in our striving, trudging together each day. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Raw Recovery, a Trudging Together podcast. My name is Dion Miller, and I'm going to be your host today. I have brought on Leanna, and I've known Leanna for, how long have I been going to that group? Well over a year, probably a year and a half now. I think I've been going to that group, and it's my home group, and on Sundays, Leanna chairs. I love it. I wish you were there every day, but we don't get to do that. So first off, thank you very much for taking your time on a Saturday afternoon to share your story with us.
I am so glad to be here. It is an honor to get to share my story, and I think it helps.
Well, this is usually about the point where I just go ahead and relinquish the show to the speaker. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it on over to you, and it is now your podcast. Thank you, Leanna.
All right. And I will, I'll start at the beginning, what it was like. So I did not grow up around alcoholics or addicts. My parents were not alcoholic.
Okay.
Barely drank.
Okay.
Really, that was a big part of what took me so long to get here, was that I didn't really know what an alcoholic was, what it was to be addicted. And I am definitely both of those things. I am an alcoholic as well as an addict.
Okay.
Really, so growing up, like most of us, dysfunctional family, and stuff happened when I was little, and then at 14, I ended up severely anorexic, went into the hospital, was molested there, got transferred to a psych ward, was raped there. Both of those things shattered my self-esteem.
Absolutely. You said you were 14?
I was 14.
Ouch.
And spent 3 months in a psych ward for anorexia, which was not very helpful to begin with.
No, well, that was the problem back then. I had problems too, and they put me in a mental ward where I just I didn't belong there.
It was not a helpful atmosphere. That is actually where I kind of got introduced more to alcohol and drugs. Not that, I'd tasted alcohol before that and whatever, but because of some of the struggles of the other patients in there and all of that, that's actually where I kind of learned that it might be a coping skill, and and my world had just crashed and burned with the sexual assaults and that.
Yeah.
So, I started checking that out some.
Okay.
The trauma that happened from the assault actually, I had issues beforehand. I was pretty withdrawn, pretty shy, all of that. I just totally collapsed in on myself.
Yeah.
Dropped out of high school.
Okay.
Got married at 16.
Yep. Yeah. Looking for approval. Yes.
that was an incredibly violent marriage. And I certainly drank a whole lot during that time and started using other drugs more.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily alcoholically, but definitely like it was my coping skill already at that point.
So it was you were abusing it.
Exactly. Yeah. I drank to get drunk so things didn't hurt so bad. And,
right. Yeah.
And to deal with the fear. And yeah, that's kind of how it helped. Coming out of that marriage, I had PTSD so bad that for years afterwards, if somebody raised their hand too quickly or moved too quickly, I would drop to the floor, cover my head, and be shaking. I mean, it was just, which is really hard to explain in a workplace while you just drop to the floor.
Yeah, where sometimes people just don't understand.
Yeah. It was, being in my skin was incredibly hard.
Okay.
And I used drugs when I could. I drank when I could here and there. Again, kind of more a binge here and there to deal with what was going on.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, through all of my life up through, well, that point and beyond, I just wanted to die. I was not comfortable in my skin. I was suicidal most of the time to one degree or another. Yeah. And really just struggling to get by. Wow. At the same time, I mean, life was still going forward. I held jobs. Sure. I had relationships. I got married again later. That was a train wreck. Got divorced again. Couple of miscarriages along the way, other things that happened. But it just, like, life didn't work, and I didn't know how to make it work, and I didn't have support of my family.
Okay.
They were somewhat in the picture, but not really supportive.
And I actually kind of have a question about the family. Was there a grandma or grandpa that was a heavy drinker? Is that why one of your parents they didn't like the drinking? No? Not that I
know of.
Just more, I'm just more curious because sometimes it happens different ways for us, and that's what I'm trying to get across through the audience, that we don't just become, that things happen that tend to make us alcoholic, to look for something else to relieve us because we can't find any relief in this world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To the best of my knowledge, my generation, so sisters struggled with alcohol and drugs to various levels. I had one sister that suicided on a drug overdose when I was 23.
Okay.
But as far as my parents, no hint of any substance.
They were just straight-laced, did what they were supposed to. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they would have a beer and a half at the picnic and be fine, or have a cocktail when they had friends over, and no big deal. I don't know what the heck happened after that generation, but we lost it. We totally lost it.
Something happened on the way.
Yes. And to the best of my knowledge, grandparents, aunts, uncles, no one in particular had an issue.
Okay.
But yeah, it definitely fell apart in
Yeah,
in my
so
generation.
you were married a second time.
I was married a second time, got divorced then,
Okay.
and still, I mean, if I had something going on and could get pain pills, I abused them. If I could go to the doctor and get sleeping pills, I abused them. If I had the chance to, pick up a couple bottles of wine, I drank them down.
The doctor gave me a prescription and said, "Do not drink." I got excited. That actually made me happy because I was
that means,
"Yay! That means the effect's going to be awesome."
Yeah. That's just kind of how it went, and it didn't. It didn't really have a huge. It wasn't really causing that many problems in my life necessarily. The general state of mind was, but yeah, really just kind of limped along. Things were escalating somewhat on the substance use side of things, but not terribly. I eventually met the love of my life, Rob, and we ended up spending 16 years together. And again, life went forward. I had jobs, lost jobs, changed jobs. Didn't really lose too many at that point. But just, really, I was struggling. And I tried a few times. I tried, going to see a therapist, but I wasn't going to be honest about what happened because I thought I needed to be quiet and keep my secrets. And so, all this time, nobody knew what had happened when I was 14. I
was wondering if your mother and father knew.
My parents knew about the molestation that happened, and they tried to address it, and it upset them, and then with what happened later, it was just like I'm dusting myself off. I'm forgetting this happened, and I'm not going to deal with
Yeah, because
forget it.
Man, I love your parents.
Well, when I got married, the very violent first marriage, they basically they knew what was going on. And they said, well, you married him, like it's your problem. That was kind of their attitude.
Yeah.
And, even at one point, I ended up with 77 stitches in my arm and nearly died. And, it was still like, well, later my parents were like, well, we figured he would probably kill you at some point, but, what could we do? I had very hands-off parents.
Yeah.
So, not a lot of support there. Not bad people. I mean, they were trying to do their best.
Yeah, they just did. Well, they came from an era where things were different.
Yeah.
And they were, they weren't given the resources. They don't have the information. They did the best that they could, but gosh, indifference is probably the worst thing a person can feel.
It was hard, and there was very much the attitude of, you smile and you share the happy things. You don't get angry. You don't share the negative
you gotta stay positive.
You keep things looking very good on the outside, no matter what's going on.
Yeah, toxic positivity.
So, I very much went through life feeling I needed to keep my secrets and keep my dirty laundry to myself. That
explains why you felt so alone. And by the time you were 14, because anorexia is an addiction also.
It is. It's very much so. It was my first addiction.
Yes.
And my first attempt to try to control my world in some way because it felt out of control.
How could you? I mean, I get it. I do. I get it.
Yeah. Rob was, the first person that I had met or known, dated, married, whatever. We actually didn't get married, although we were more married than the marriages.
Yep.
But, that was the first relationship where things were respectful, and I actually got to see that there were, good people in the world, that relationships could be good. And I still had all of this trauma that had never been dealt with.
Yeah.
And still struggled with it.
Yeah.
And, we did fine for years, but then just other difficulties and the trauma catching up, I started leaning more into the, let's get drunk on the weekend. And
you went to your solution.
Leaning more into finding excuses to get the pain pills or the sleeping pills or the benzos or the whatever.
Yeah.
Enough that it started interfering. Like it started being more of the thing that I wanted to make sure I had that covered, kind of.
Okay. So your life was starting to become unmanageable at this. This is where it really gets going.
Yes.
Okay.
It was starting to become unmanageable, and then really more so with the other substances.
Okay.
The alcohol was there. It was part of it throughout, but it was really leaning into the opioids, benzos, and barbiturates.
Okay.
And there was a point, and I still remember the day where, by this point things had progressed quite a bit. I had actually lost a job because I just couldn't really show up.
Yeah. Monday morning flu.
There was a day where, like, I planned, by that point it was like, okay, if I just hold off until, 11 o'clock in the morning to take the first handful of whatever, then I can be pretty wasted through most of the day, and I'll have, I would plan it out like that.
Yep.
And that there was that day that I thought that, and the next moment I was swallowing everything I had. I know the moment that I lost control.
Yeah.
And it took over, and that was probably like the end of 2005, first part of 2006.
Okay.
And from there, it was just falling off a cliff. It was just, it took over completely.
Yeah.
And again, it was mostly the other substances. The alcohol was there, but not, my alcoholism did not ever progress as far as it might have.
Yeah.
But yeah, from there it was just, it ruled every moment of my life.
Wow.
I would do anything to get the next fix. My sister, my oldest sister, died of cancer in 2006. And I was pissed off because she was dying and I wasn't. And how come she got to get out of this life?
That kind of felt like an unfair cut, huh?
And, I mean, I stole drugs from her.
Yeah.
Like anything I could get. It was really
I've
awful.
done that too. Yeah.
But it was like I didn't feel like I had a choice by that point. There was the day that came that Rob told me, you know, it's me or the drugs, and I was heartbroken.
Yeah.
Because I stood there and told him I'll be going because I couldn't stop. Yeah. And it broke my heart because I loved him with all my heart.
Yes.
And I knew that I loved him, and it wasn't nearly as strong as the addiction.
Correct.
And it tore my heart apart.
Oh.
And I ended up leaving the house and going to stay with my mom, supposedly to help take care of her. By that point, my dad had died a few years before.
Okay.
And in all honesty, it was my mom taking care of me, of course.
Yep.
My solution, by that point, I was unemployable completely.
Yeah.
My thought of showing up for a job interview was to get drunk or wasted on other stuff and then show up, and there were more than a few occasions where whoever was interviewing me was like half picking me up off the floor. Mm-hmm. I'm sure I made a lovely impression. But yeah, I would, drive to go get stuff and wake up in the morning and not remember how come my Jeep was not where I thought I left it.
Yep.
I was in and out of the emergency room. By the time I got sober, I had $500,000 in medical bills.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I woke up several times with black chalk all over me. Being at the hospital. And that's so scary, coming to and not knowing. And I went and did it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was so terrified at the end that I would kill somebody when I was driving.
Yep.
And I would wake up to the knock on the door from the police. Mm-hmm. And what bothered me most was that I would have killed somebody and not even known. Do something so horrible.
Yep.
And not even be aware that I had done anything. And yeah, stole from my mom, stole drugs from my mom. It was just a mess.
Even the strongest morals like that still don't stop us. We still do it knowing we could go out and kill somebody's child. That'd be the worst. I couldn't live with myself, but yet I would do it anyway.
Yeah. I couldn't stop.
And this is an obsession beyond human aid. It's beyond human aid.
Yeah. There finally came the day where my mom and my niece and nephew, who were my oldest sister's children, so they were like pretty much the same age as me.
Okay.
But they decided to do an intervention.
Yep.
And they were at my mom's house and basically said that they would take me to a rehab unit.
Okay.
And I flipped them off, told them to go to hell.
Yeah.
Grabbed my purse, stomped out the door to nothing.
Yeah. Where were you going?
At that point, it was like asking me to stop breathing. That's the best way that it was like, I could not fathom in any way, shape, or form not having the drugs,
and then to have the audacity to confront me. Yeah.
My mom had called the police, so I had to leave.
Yeah.
And basically stomped out the door, all pride and entitlement and to nothing. Wandered the streets for as best as I could remember, probably about a week and a half.
Okay.
In and out of the emergency rooms. At one point, I stole a blanket from the emergency room because
you didn't have a blanket.
I needed a blanket.
Yeah.
So I was wandering the streets with, a hospital blanket wrapped around me, and and my thought was I was going to jump in front of a truck and just kill myself, but then it was like, I can't do that to somebody. Like, it would tear me apart if I hit somebody with my vehicle. Mm-hmm. I can't be the one that makes someone go through that. Somebody else
killed somebody, to kill you.
Yeah. So I didn't do that, but by the very end, kind of the last thing I remember was being at University of Colorado Hospital and being so wasted.
Yeah.
My mind so far gone that I couldn't find my way across the parking lot to the front door. And I would stand there and the parking lot security guy would come around and I would ask him, where's the entrance? He would point me on my way and I would get about 5 steps and I would just be frozen because I would be lost again.
Yeah.
And I would have to wait till I circled back around.
Yeah.
And then I spent probably 4 days in just a complete psychotic break in the hospital.
All right.
I
take it they put you on a hold.
They probably did. I don't know.
It wouldn't have mattered. You needed to be hospitalized. So, yeah.
I was hallucinating.
Thank God you were at the hospital.
Yes. That was certainly a blessing. And I don't know what kind of finally broke through of that, but I did finally start to come out of it and just realized how screwed I was.
Yeah.
And one of the doctors came in and said, no matter how big the mess is, it can always be cleaned up. And that hit me really hard. It was like, okay. And then by that point, nobody in my life, I had kicked everyone out of my life. Yeah. So nobody knew if I was alive or dead or where I was.
Yeah.
And I had no place to go and no money. So I they gave me a list of places I could go, and really the only place that was open to me was Denver Detox.
Yep.
And one of the nurses there gave me $2 for bus fare, which I cried. I cried buckets because
nurses are our best advocates. They really are.
Yeah.
They are.
And whatever I had stashed in my Jeep at that point, I took so I could get to detox, but I also had this moment of, and I've shared this at the meeting too. I had this moment of just telling whatever was out there, whatever had kept me breathing, I give up. I don't know what to do. If you want me to keep breathing, you're going to have to show me what comes next.
Yeah.
I total surrender. And in that moment was my first moment I could ever remember of peace.
Wow.
It was so powerful.
Wow.
And, you know, at the same time, it was like, I have no idea what comes next. You're going to have to show me. Because by this time I have destroyed every bit of my life.
Yeah.
Pretty much. There were a few yet, but in that moment was my first moment of peace, and the first time that it was like, whatever it takes, I'll do it. Like, I don't know what else. And I managed to get down to detox, August 17th, 2007 is my sobriety date. So that's when I landed there.
Denver Cares? Was it Denver Detox or Denver Cares?
Denver Cares.
Okay.
Yeah.
If people don't know about Denver Cares, that's really rough.
It was
not the easiest detox to be in. So.
I got there and all hell was breaking loose, so I ended up sitting there for 45 minutes thinking, can I sit here or am I going to run for the door? And then they threw me in the quiet room, which was hell. And then they let me out of there, and I spent the next 3-4 days so dope sick. I did not know my bones could hurt so bad.
Yep.
And I mean, at that point, I really was detoxing from the opioids.
Oh yeah.
And it was just hell.
Yep.
And at some point during that, I went to my first AA meeting, which
did they bring it in-house?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got there, and I was listening to these people, and it was like, holy cow, there are other people like me. Because I really thought all this time, I did not know that 12-step programs existed. I didn't know that anyone else was a slob that couldn't just stop taking whatever.
That's what the disease, that's what when we say the isolation and that loneliness, we do literally think that because of our problems, we're this way, and we feel very alone.
It was devastating.
It was,
and shameful, and I really thought I was the only slob that couldn't stop.
Yeah.
And I started hearing some of those stories, and it was like, I found my people. And then I went up to a woman afterwards, and at this point, I knew I was an addict, knew that in my bones, did not identify as an alcoholic.
Yeah.
So I talked to this woman after the meeting, and she told me, well, this isn't for you.
Mm-hmm.
There's other programs you need to go to. And it just about did me in.
Yes.
To be rejected by these people who I thought I just found my people, and now you're telling me leave. It just about did me in. I only went to a few more AA meetings there because of the cookies and because I was required.
Yeah.
I ended up spending 12 days in Denver Cares.
Wow, they let you stay that long? Of course, it was different. It was kind of different back then.
I was lucky
too.
because that was really I remember at one point,
opiates.
My knee buckling and sitting on the bed and thinking, "Oh my God, this is the best I can hope for." It's gotten this bad. But then I was eventually able to get into Stepping Stone for treatment, which I get was a huge blessing because I had nowhere to go.
Yeah. I'm very familiar with Stepping Stone.
Yeah. And there, that's where at that point I wasn't so hot on AA, but they required meetings, and we had meetings in the house, and we also had CA meetings. And my first sponsor was someone who took a meeting in there, and it blew me away that this woman who, the little I'd heard of her story, it was like, she's possibly a little bit crazier than I am. And she can bring a meeting in here and walk out the front door.
Oh, seems free to me.
Like, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
And eventually she did become my first sponsor. And
it is nice to go back to detox as not a client. It is nice to do that.
It is. And over the years, for a very long time, I took meetings helped take meetings into detox.
Good
and
for you.
By the time I had 90 days, my first sponsor was telling me to be of service and bring a meeting, hold a meeting, chair a meeting at Stepping Stone. So I was, probably the first 7 years of my sobriety, I was carrying a meeting into Stepping Stone, and then I took a little bit of a break, and then I was carrying a meeting one day a week in there up until the pandemic, up until February 2020. And so that connection to newcomers meetings, to H&I meetings was huge.
Yep.
And helped me, same reason I like the 3 p.m. I mean, I get to hear people's stories of what it's like just coming in, and I need to be reminded of that.
Yeah.
I need to remember what it was like.
It still doesn't work out there. Alcohol is not going to serve me, neither the drugs. Anything mind altering just really isn't going to serve me anymore.
For me, it's everything. I cannot use any substance safely.
We're what we call addictive personalities.
My first sponsor helped me see that I was an alcoholic as well.
Yeah.
And just the role that had played. Certainly that could have been worse than it was, but
if drugs weren't available, it probably would have been. Yeah.
And CA and AA were part of my story for probably the first year and a half or so of sobriety, but I really, really found my solution in AA.
Yeah.
And yeah, the coming into the program in the beginning, it was just like, if I just don't have to drink or drug, like that is a full-blown miracle, more than I could ever ask for in my whole life. Yay. And it's turned out to be so much more, because I really did, I really didn't have the handbook for how to live any of my life. And I really needed the design for living. I
needed it bad.
Yeah. I didn't have social skills by then. I didn't know how to show up and be present. I didn't know how to be friend, daughter, partner, whatever, employee. I really needed it all. And the gifts from working the program are huge. The amends there's another piece to this too. When I got about 8 months sober, I was seeing somebody.
Okay.
And it was actually the first time that I'd probably showed up really honestly in a relationship.
Cool.
Which was very cool and felt very good. However, right about 8 months sober, this other person, by that time I had moved out of Stepping Stone into an apartment with another girl that had been in Stepping Stone. She promptly fell off the face of the earth, so I had a 2-bedroom apartment that I was trying to afford on my own, working jobs. And this person that I was dating, whose name is Floyd, by that point was moving out of his place, needed a place to stay. Again, it's like, this is the first time I've shown up honestly and, boundaries and things like that. So, worked out this agreement that he could pay $100 or whatever for staying in the spare room, and no, we're not living together, but temporary situation. Anyway, so he landed there and things started going very, very wrong.
Okay.
He started getting very aggressive. And I told him that he needed to leave. And things did not get any better. They actually got worse. Not physical violence, but horrible aggression, verbal aggression. Over the next day or so. So, next morning I wake up and it's like, okay, you're leaving tonight. This is over, done. Not doing this. And I left to go on about my day, and part of that was actually seeing Rob and helping him with his taxes, because by that point we were at least friends again.
I'm happy to hear that, because we were all sitting here wondering what happened to Rob. I've been wondering about Rob the rest of this time.
You'll get to hear a little bit more of that if we have time, because
you light up when you say his name, and it's beautiful.
Yes. So I went to see him. Floyd is texting me just horrible stuff, but Go there, go to leave Rob's place. Didn't really tell him all of what's going on, just there's stuff. Go on to my second job. Anyway, leave work. I was actually working at York Street at the time. Left work at like 10:30 that night. So closed up, went home, walk in the door, and this person is waiting for me. I had gotten a few calls along the way, thought he was drinking. He was also in the program.
Okay.
Thought he was drinking, going home, figuring I'm probably going to be calling detox.
Yeah.
Instead, I walk through the door, and he's stone cold sober.
Okay.
And I walk in, and he walks up behind me, and you may want to cut some of this. I don't know. You said you don't edit, but I'll let you decide. I'm not going to give all the gruesome details, but he walks up behind me and says, "I'll give you to a count of 5 to tell me this isn't over." It's like, oh, hell yes, this is over and you're leaving. And then he says, "I'll give you to a count of 5 to tell me if you want to live." And he kind of starts to, I'm standing by the window at that point. He was kind of half pushing me out and then, pulling me back. It's like, I do want to live, which was kind of a revelation in the moment. It's like I spent my whole life wanting to die. And actually, things are going better now. But then he pushed me back, landed on top of me, strangled me until I passed out. Came to, he told me I would probably do 10 to 15 years in prison for what I just did. I might as well make it worth it. You're going to die now. And strangled me until I was out of my body. I was dead, gone. Somehow I dropped back in.
Yeah. Wow.
He was in the kitchen when I started coughing up the blood, and I could tell he was surprised. He thought he had killed me. And from there, I was held hostage for little over 14 hours.
Okay.
Was raped during that time. Knew I was going to die. I mean, this whole time he's like, "You're not leaving here alive."
I killed you once.
Yes, clearly he knows he's capable of it, and he's basically telling me, like, "You're not leaving here alive." I was fighting to get to the door. He was throwing me back in. It was just, it went on and on and on and on and on. And the whole time, I knew I was going to die. Like, I knew, it was like, crap, this is how it ends.
Yeah.
But there's also, like, when I was walking in the door, when he was first threatening me, I was praying. It was like, God grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, including the fact that I'm dying.
Yeah.
Courage to change what I can. I managed to keep him from smashing my phone by telling him Rob would probably be calling me with a question, and if I didn't answer, Rob might show up to check on me.
Yeah.
I can remember through all of those 14 hours thinking, thank goodness at least I am sober. I've gotten to spend the last 8 months showing up, being genuine, not just taking up air.
Yeah.
And that was such a comfort. It was like,
Wow.
I knew, I can't explain, there's such a difference between, like, thinking, like, in my first marriage, which was really violent, there were many times that I thought, I may die, like, he may kill me.
That sounds like spiritual
close.
awareness to me.
But there is a very different feeling of just knowing, like, this is the very end, and how am I leaving this world? Like,
yeah.
It was such a comfort to know that I was sober.
Wow.
And it was so powerful. And eventually, eventually Rob did call.
Good.
Floyd had my phone, so I finally convinced him that I needed to pick up, or again, Rob might show up, and you don't want him to show up in the middle of this. Yeah. Rob called about tax questions. I'd been helping him with tax, so this is April 14th and 15th, the time spread when this is happening in 2008. And Floyd was listening, holding the phone actually between our ears, and Rob's asking me some question about taxes, and I'm trying to give him the most bizarre answer I can to tell him something's wrong. And he's not getting it, and I can tell he's not getting it. And then Floyd leaned back to motion for me to cut the call. And Rob asked me in that moment, "Are you at work?" And I said no. And that was the piece that Rob understood something was wrong, because he knew, like, trying to afford a 2-bedroom apartment, I was working my butt off.
Yeah.
Nothing would have kept me from being at work because I needed it.
Yeah, he knew that.
He knew that.
Yeah.
And that it still took another 2.5 hours, but he that's what told him something was wrong. He eventually showed up with police. And Floyd was arrested at the scene, and
good. Thank God.
Yeah. And and I got to go on and make my amends with Rob, which was really, really powerful. We did get to be friends. Rob just died last summer.
Okay.
Which I'm still grieving.
Sure.
In very big ways. Floyd got out of plea deal, all of that. Criminal legal system's a mess. He did get 10 years. He's been out for a while. I do a lot of safety planning. I tend to be very, very private about where I live and all of that because I have a safety plan that
retribution. Yeah, you bet. That's real.
God does for us what we can't do for ourselves, but there's a lot that we can do for ourselves.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that we don't. Yeah, exactly. There's still things we can do for ourselves. You bet.
But all of that happened right about 8 months sober, and I got through it.
Yeah.
It took 4 years of really intense therapy to heal from that that layer of...
Well, just that one, and that's...
Yeah.
Just starting.
But I got to show up and do that work. I had actually already started therapy because, lo and behold, I figured out when I removed the alcohol and the drugs, I needed to do something because I was crawling out of my skin.
Yep.
But yeah, whole lot of intense work on that, and I mean, I couldn't have gotten through that process. And for me, it has to be drug-free because I can't use the antidepressants or the anxiety medication or anything. I couldn't have gotten through it without the program and the outside help. And it's, I mean, I love my sobriety. It is so important to me, and I need a program that works in really tough times. And I've gotten to test what some of those tough times can feel like.
You found out, didn't you? You're a testament to it. Just a few things on it. One, it was hard to tell. So thank you very much for that. Because it told us some things also. That God can keep us sober. He will answer you in the right times. And even during that, you had some spiritual where I don't know that I could have brought myself to do that. So I'm just saying, I'm kind of seeing it on a different view of fucking just how tough you are with God in your life.
And I always call my higher power because I didn't go into all the religious stuff. I mean, but yeah, I could not have gotten through that, much less through the hellish healing process.
Yeah.
Without the guidance of my higher power. Like I cannot imagine life without that. And I know I've got another drunk in me. I could pick up again. I will not make it back. I was that close to just being institutionalized and having my brain totally fried.
Yeah. Well, you were almost at, you were about to be brain damaged. If you take any more, that's what'll happen. So, and I kind of want to let the audience know, if, let's say you quit drinking and drugs for a while, if you go back, you're going to be back in the same place in a matter of weeks, months, because your disease is still progressing.
I could not, by the end, I could not write my name. Yeah. I could not function.
Nope.
After I got sober, after I went through the incident, I decided, because of a few mixed experiences, the world needed more advocates, so I decided to go back to school. Took me 7.5 years part-time, but I got my bachelor's degree. I work as an advocate, and I mean, miracles happen. I could not, I used the program and all of that. I used it through school. I used it through life, it shows up every day in work.
Yeah.
It is such a huge part of my life.
What kind of advocacy are you doing? Because we can do that. I want the audience to kind of know what advocacy is.
I work with domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, and human trafficking survivors.
Wow.
I love the work that I get to do.
I'm sure.
And yeah, I I would not have the life that I have today. Well, I wouldn't, I wouldn't have the life that I had, period, because I wouldn't be here. And Rob is and always will be my hero. He will always have a huge place in my life. I would not have walked away from my apartment had he have not been able to intervene. There was no one else that could have.
Sometimes people in our lives are saviors. My wife was she's a savior. And some people are just like that. They just come along and save you. And I don't understand it either, but it worked.
No. And yeah, it's getting to show up for life is amazing. Yeah. And all those years that I lived on self-destruct, I really was just living my life trying to figure out how to be dead.
Yeah.
Today I get to show up actually for life and taking part in life, and it's amazing and it's exciting.
That's neat. That's really neat. How much time do you have now? Like, you don't mind me asking.
I will,
I suck at math.
12 days, I will have 16 years sober. Clean and sober.
Yay.
Not a drug. I have gotten through hip surgeries and everything else without drugs.
Wow.
Like, drug-free, alcohol-free. It's awesome.
Yeah. And that's a lot of courage. That is a lot of courage. We get our courage I get my courage from God, but it's neat because, like when I came into the program, I expected my fears to go down. It's like, oh no, Dion, that's not going to go down. We're going to give you more courage. I'm like, oh, that's better than what I thought. I'd much rather have more courage. And it's made you very, very strong. And I'm going to tell you, I would not have thought any of that happened to you, Leanna. I would have never known.
I mean, it's not the topics for chit chat in most most situations, but it is. We actually never know people's stories, really. I mean, we hear the bits and pieces. But yeah.
That's why I really enjoy doing these, because then I get to listen. I actually get to be a part of the story and listen. Even though our stories are different, they're quite the same. And I'll always say stories bring hope. Stories make loneliness vanish. When I came into the program, and we talked on this a little bit earlier, when I came to the program, these people were talking my talk. I felt a lot less lonely. I didn't want to die as much, is I guess the way I should put it, because I wanted me dead.
Yeah.
And I understand that, because first 2-3 months of my sobriety, I had to learn how to talk. I had to learn how to walk, because I was just so far gone. And waking up from that, scared the crap out of me. It just scared me. So, thank you so much for being on today with us, Leanna.
You are welcome. Thank you for the opportunity. And it's been an honor getting to talk with you and getting to hear some of your story along the way too.
Yeah, that's great. Fantastic. Well, again, thank you. And for my listeners, here again, we have a story that's a little bit different, where parents weren't alcoholic, grandparents were not alcoholic, but because of situations in people's lives, you know, people run around and you don't realize how lonely they are. And when it's hard to be in your own skin at the age of 14, you're going to find something. You're going to stick your finger down your throat. You're going to drink alcohol. You're going to, you're going to find something that makes you feel better, and you're going to think that's the solution, which is unfortunate because it's not. So, but always keep in mind that everybody's got different paths. And so though you may not be terminally unique, you are beautifully unique in the fact that you are a child of God. Thank you everybody for being here. I love you all. Peace out and have a day.